Um, so yeah, obviously I am broadcasting from my cell phone because that's just the best equipment I have to broadcast anymore. Let's dim that a little bit so I don't look. It's a little bit better there. All right. Hi, Jared. Uh, yeah, so this is just going to be kind of an impromptu update on the Great Bassoon. Looks like I got a couple people here. I'll wait a couple more minutes before I just kind of go into detail of what I've been doing the last few months on it, or Jared and I have been doing, because Jared has been a big part of the process, of course. And I'm going to get myself a little drink here. One of my new favorite addictions, ginger beer. Not actual alcoholic, just like almost peppery ginger soda. But yeah, so I have been working quite a bit in the last few days on the the Great Bassoon. Oh, yep, getting some fizz there. Designing the neck for the G bass. Nice. So Jared is working on building a G bass clarinet, which we're all excited to see. More things need to be in G. Why not? But yeah. So what I've got here is the most updated version of the Great Bassoon. I'm going to go ahead and take the vocal off. I'm not going to do any playing tonight. I have some other things I'm working on with playing. But let's start with the wing joint. So right now, the wing joint has been split into three parts. This part here, the shepherd's crook. Come on off. I've got blue tape under there to prevent any leaks. So one thing we did is we split this off into a separate joint because it turns out gluing here was just a nightmare, and putting on a really nice socket here means that this can be changed out if ever it's needed. We can experiment with different tapers, and it's just easier to manufacture and deal with. Then there's the center part here. So collectively, we're calling this the upper wing joint, and this is the lower wing joint. The lower wing joint here, this is just a test print that we've been working on to compare. Let me grab, I just happen to have an old lower wing joint here. So this is the previous version, and the big differences you're going to see right here is the second finger tone hole has now been moved up to here, which means that, so let me set that down. You can play 1, 2. Just like that, finger stretch, just nice and easy, 1, 2. The only thing is we have discovered this is a hair flat, so we're probably gonna move these up about 5 millimeters or so. And yeah, that will be super easy. And in doing that, we've eliminated one key. So, sorry, yeah, I've got, my hands are covered in super glue because I've been manufacturing, building things all day. And I'll show you some of the stuff I've been working on. Unfortunately, this is not a good print. This is really rough quality, so this is not going to be a final. Of course, it's also green. The final version isn't going to be green. That said, though, I am going to keep this as green just for a little accent color because, you know, have a little style in there. It'll be kind of just a nice little feature. I'll have this as green, and I'll probably have the boot end cap as green, and then all the bands around it, like this one here, they'll all be in this nice dark brown. One other thing is it has a really thick layer of lacquer all over it, like 3, 4, 5 coats of lacquer that I have just today I took just really fine grit steel wool over to give it a little bit of a matte finish, and that will seal everything up, because one of the things about 3D printing is that you do run the risk of having lots of gaps in the print if it's not absolutely perfect, and no print ever is absolutely perfect. With this new design, one thing that I have discovered is that E flat, which was going to be played 1, 2, and then the E flat key, just like you would on Contra for this tone hole right here, can be played in a forked fingering. It'd be 1, 3, and then the thumb C sharp. Because this now works, it means I get to eliminate a key on the boot joint. There was going to be a thumb E flat key. So we've simplified the mechanism there. There's only going to be one key now going across the wing joint to the boot joint. That's going to be the C sharp, and there's no way to get around that without having to do a complete redesign from the ground up. But that's expected on there. And honestly, Bassoon's C sharp key should be on the boot joint too. That's why it's on that really tall riser that kind of raises up from the body. That just gives it a little extra length. Really, it should be in the tenon itself, which just be a nightmare to produce. So yeah, the improved ergonomics here are just wonderful. They sit under the fingers really well. And let me show you what I did today. And today, I took the boot joint, the bass joint, boot bell bass. All start with B, and it's it's confusing after a while. Yes, I love the aesthetic of the crook too. Yes, it not only it looks good, there's a lot of functionality to it as well. But today I went ahead. This is a finalized bass joint that is really close to in tune, and I have put all of the long rods on it. So I manufactured all of these today, and they're all sitting in place, and they all move really well, really easily. They're all on pivot screws. In fact, they're Fox Bassoon pivot screws, because those are really easy to get. There's one thing I got to do. There's a little brace here. This is the low A key, this really long 2-foot long rod here is for the low A key. It bridges over the C sharp and the B keys, C sharp and the C tone hole here. This little bracket here is going to need to be just filed out just a little bit. It's got a little bit of caked on lacquer in it, so it doesn't move quite smoothly. But to do this, I finally got to use my lathe, which has been sitting in my garage for nearly a year. I think I got it like last March. With tomorrow being March, yeah, it's close to a year. And I just went, and these are just stock 3/16 inch rods that you can buy at Tractor Supply Company. You just go and pick up a 3-foot length and cut it to whatever length you need. And then I do center holes in the ends, and I did that on the lathe to get the pivots, and then get the correct shape using a carbide burring tool. It's a real fancy burring tool that will go right in and create the right shape you need. That took me a few hours to get those in, but the rods are in. It doubles the weight of the base joint, which is kind of expected. Metal weighs a lot more than plastic, but it's there. One thing now is I can put it all together. So let me get everything together. And you can kind of see how it fits together here, just like that. And so one thing I was worried about with the second finger tone hole was the low A rod, because the low A key right here sits in the crook of the thumb. But thankfully, I'm not even touching it, except barely. I would touch it a little bit if I go way over here to get to the middle of the wing joint on the thumb. But the keys for this are all going to be brought over some, so it's going to be closer. Someone with a really small hand may have a little trouble getting around here. And it may be that someone with a small hand would have to disable the low A and just have an alternate low B flat bell. So that's something I've been thinking about. Yeah, so it turns out for my hands, the ergonomics here is just really, really nice. You can see here the finger spacing, 1, 2. Key here will be for 3, and then the pinky key's right here. And actually, we're going to move those up a little bit. So pinky key's right here. The E flat key will be here, the D flat, and then the A down here. And I'll probably try and make those fairly thin keys because, yeah, because that's going to be a real big stretch for the pinky to go all the way down to. It can go. Theoretically, the A key could go all the way down to there, but it's about here. Should be fine. The other thing I did is I got out an old upper wing joint. This happens to be a really old one that I did in ABS plastic, so it's been acetone smoothed. This actually is the only joint that came out really nicely in the acetone smoothing process. But what I did is I started drilling holes. You can see where all the blue tape is here. And see if I can get right up close. I just started drilling holes approximately where I thought octave vents should go. And in doing that, I've got a good idea of where the octave vents are going to go. So this is the uppermost one here. It's going to go right above the band. So the vocal will go in here and just right above where the vocal will enter. And then one here, and then one here. This one here will probably actually be moved over here to the side because it's going to be a pivot key there. The rest will be just simple lever keys. Well, no, the upper one is the most complicated key on the instrument, and eventually I may do a video on how I'm going to have to do that. Seltzer water. Well, some of the final joints also be printed green. The only part that will be printed green will be the shepherd's crook, this right here, and then I'm thinking that the final boot cap down here will be printed green. So it's kind of the two extremities. The bell ring will be, all the other rings will be printed brown. So the main body will be this brown here. One issue I'm having right now is the supplier of the filament that I've been using has been out of stock on this for several months now. I bought up the last of it. I have been told it is coming in on a shipment in March, which is tomorrow. Fingers crossed it comes in sometime this month. I only have about a spool left, and the problem there is I keep trying to print a new bell. Notice I haven't had a bell on. The bell is pretty much finalized except for maybe some little tweaking here and there. but I cannot, for the life of me, get the bell to print correctly, and the filament just keeps breaking. So I've wasted a bunch of filament over the last couple weeks just dealing with it breaking. But yeah, the next thing I'm going to do is I got in today a shipment of cane, gouged and profiled contrabassoon cane. There's really only one place I found that supplies that particular combination of cane. It's Midwest Musical Imports, and I'm going to be experimenting with making some real great bassoon reeds. I tried making one right before the stream, and it is a absolutely terrible reed. Absolutely. What I discovered in this is that I cut it a little bit longer than the reed I'd been using. Now, the reed I've been using is a modified Baroque bassoon reed. This is a custom-built shaper that I've got right here. Here it is. That Richard Bobo made for me. You can see his logo right there, Ribo. And so I was thinking, yeah, I'll just make it a hair longer and trim it back. Nope. I'm going to have to make these reeds quite a bit longer with the contrabassoon cane, which ideally is what I want. I am going to now play the most awful sound in the world. Yeah, that doesn't work. As opposed to this reed here that I've been testing on. It's completely dry, but it will at least make a sound. So reeds are going to take me a while to figure out. But I've got the cane in. I'm also probably going to start talking to some local area reed makers and see what we can do there. I mean, the hardest part for the reed maker would be the shaper, and I've got that. So I'll probably converse with some of those. And it'll also really be dependent on the new vocal once it's made. And I'll be excited to see how that goes. I've talked to the vocal maker quite a bit. He's got some ideas, and we're going to try out a bunch of stuff. But, yeah, so I'll leave it open for any questions right now. I know there's only a few of you watching. When I was trying out the Harmonics, I was able to get fairly nicely into the second octave. I'm not going to demonstrate that now, but yeah, maybe I can actually. Yeah, let me just show you a little bit, see what I can do. It's a little challenging because I've got to plug up a bunch of holes. And I got to switch out the upper wing joint. Oh, okay, question just came in. Is the neck you're gonna be you mean the vocal? No. This is not a final vocal at all. I have a good friend who is a professional vocal maker, and he is going to be making he's going to be making a whole series of vocals. Then we're going to try out various different combinations of those. See what works. We'll try a few different tapers, and it's possible. Jared and I have actually talked about changing some of the taper in the wing joint itself. To just try and change some of the tonal characteristics. Okay. So, I'm just gonna play... So that's open F, sounding C. And then this upper vent right here should take that up to the F, the octave higher. So you see that works really pretty well. In fact, I actually need to close that. Actually, I think that note I've... And so the that note, which is written D, sounding A, that would go to the next vent, and then I'll go right here to written C. And by opening up the wrong vent, I can take it up another fifth. And I'm going to have to, of course, do some experimenting there. So that's written high G, and that's just fingered C and half hold. So yeah, there is some high register here. But yeah. All right, so what other questions we have? Hopefully, by the end of the week, I will have a completed bell. Hopefully. I've got so many different bell parts around here. It's like a bell forest. I've got bell parts all over the desk I'm at. There's some on the floor. There's some on the table that the 3D printer's on. It's nuts. But we're close to locking things off. All right, I got a question come in. Let's see. It comes in on the phone first, and then just delayed on the computer. Wonder why. You mentioned how you and Jerry considered changing the wing joint taper. Does the German bassoon also deviate from a simple cone? Yes. And this is something interesting. So what I did last week is I got out my bassoon, and I happened to have inherited a set of bore measuring tools. I may tell the story of how I got those in another video. It's the same story of how I got the Baroque bassoon. Where is my Baroque bassoon? I have no clue. Anyway, so yeah, I started measuring the interior of the bore of my Wolf bassoon. And it turns out there is a stretch in there about this long in the very top of the wing joint that is almost completely cylindrical. So it goes really through the vent section. And so something Jared and I are thinking about is on this part of the wing joint, maybe make about this much here cylindrical, and then taper it out to its normal spot. It'll be something, and because we now have this part removable from this, I don't have to worry about printing all three parts again. So that's going to be something that'll be really easy to switch out. Sasha, it says, is there a way to improve the reliability of bell printing, or you always have to print a bunch in order to get a good one? So the reliability of the printing has to do really just with my particular printer. And on this particular instance, every time I went to print, I was having just a one issue after the other. And so it just, you fix one thing and another thing pops up. The reason, though, we were having to print so many is the notes on the bell, so the low B and the low B flat were really, really flat. And so it had to keep moving the tone holes up. We got the low B in tune, but interestingly, on the low B in tune, there was a slight error. So couldn't use that part. So one tiny little error, and I couldn't use the part. And then, but the B flat, we still have not gotten it in tune. I have moved that B flat tone hole right now 45 millimeters from the initial placement, and it's still flat. So hopefully this next go we've increased, instead of moving the tone hole, we've opened the hole a little bit more, so made it a little bit wider, and hopefully that will fix the intonation. We'll see. Do I plan on making the Greatbassoons out of wood like the other members? I've talked to my vocal maker, Rufus Acosta, about this. He says there's no reason why we can't. The only issue is from going from this to wood is that the walls of the instrument will have to be thickened. Most of it throughout the instrument is designed with a 5 millimeter wall thickness, particularly through the bass joint and parts of the bell. The problem is posts have a 4.5 millimeter thread thickness. And so there's a 0.5 millimeter room for error of going into the bore, which you do not want. So really, ideally, I would need to thicken the walls by 2 millimeters up to 7 millimeters, which would mean that everything would have to be redesigned. And it can be done. It's going to take a lot of time, but it is possible to do it. All right. Chris is going to be recording soprano sax for Symphony 3. Excellent. Get some more saxophone parts in there. I look forward to hearing that. Yeah, that Symphony 3 is a massive project. It makes Symphony 2 look small. All right. I would love to make it in wood. The most difficult part to do in wood, of course, would be the shepherd's crook. This could be done in wood. You would have to basically CNC route it in 2 halves, then glue the 2 halves together. And it would be a very, very difficult, this would be a very difficult part to do in wood. Something like this is so easy to do 3D printing, but in wood it'd be very, very difficult. For right now, I'm just going to stick with the 3D printing, but there's no reason why it can't be done in wood. Unlike Richard's subcontra bassoon, where weight is a huge concern. Weight is a concern here, but not as much as with the subcontra bassoon. The 3D printing drastically reduces the weight. All right. What else do we have, guys? Oh, if there are no more questions, we'll go ahead and end this for the night. It's fun. It is getting closer and closer to being a reality. This is definitely the closest I have been. Okay, could the lead pipe on a contrabassoon be the extension of the vocal? I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that. What's the vision for number 3? So, Chris, there is a full video down that I posted probably back in September, maybe October, about what Symphony 3 is about. It's a long, complex story. Yeah, I would just suggest going and watching that particular video. There's also the description of it on my website, brettnewtoncomposer.com. Knowing how the low B on bassoon is quite bright, the low B flat on the great bassoon would enlarge the tone hole, make this note more uneven. So it turns out that the low B's brightness is a fact that has to do with the second lowest note on a conical bore instrument will be bright. And that's just kind of a fact of nature. Go watch Christian Omaronis's video on his low A bell. And when he puts on the low A bell, the brightness of the B moves to B flat. It's a fascinating scenario. And oboes are like this. Low B on oboe is pretty bright. Not quite as snarling as on bassoon, though. There's a Discord for Symphony 3. Yes, there's a Discord for Symphony 3. I'll go ahead and send a link in the chat. I do have a few more spots to fill if you're interested in playing. I will head over to watch it and read about it now. I'll start sending the audio over hopefully by Saturday morning. Excellent. Do I plan on having some great bassoons with only a low B flat? At the moment, no. If it turns out that the low A just proves to be too difficult for players, for height, for mobility reasons, it is possible that I will also offer a low B flat bell. To give you some idea, this would be about the size of the low B flat bell. Oops. I twisted a little bit there. Oh, I hope none of you are seasick. Evidently that's what was holding the camera in place, was the bell. Go figure. That's close enough. But this will be about the length of a low B flat bell. This is actually the top 2 sections. This is the final top section. It's actually Keywork on it. It's just a straight tube. But at the moment, no. We're just going to have it as low low A. Probably not in a position to contribute at the moment, but I'm interested in seeing what the process of putting the recording together is like. Yeah, it's lots and lots of volunteers from all over the world. It's just a giant collaborative process. Yes, a bassoon with 3 S's and an umlaut. We need more umlauts. It's a great word. But, all right, anybody else have any other questions on it? If not, we'll go ahead and wrap it up for the evening. So let's see, I saw one come in. How different would an oversized bassoon with more bend sound compared to an undersized contrabassoon with less bend? So the thing with bends is the more bends you add to an instrument, the more resistance you are going to get. Ideally, you would want an instrument with as few bends as possible. Bends complicate things tremendously. Every bend you put in an instrument doubles the complexity of it. So the straighter you can keep an instrument mechanically, the better it will be. Aerodynamically, the better it will be. If you can have a completely straight bassoon, you could have perfect acoustics on it. But because the bassoon is bent over, you have to make a lot of compromises. Contrabassoon, one of the reasons contrabassoon was so late to develop is because it does have those 4 parallel bores. So it is an order of magnitude more difficult than a bassoon. The nice thing about this design of the Greatbassoon, with technically 2 bends, but realistically 1, is that you do not encounter any of the problems that the contrabassoon has when making the keywork. So you've got your main bend here in the boot joint, and this bend up here is so small, it's only going to affect one single key on the instrument. Really, this can be thought of just as an extension of the vocal. So ideally, practically, think of this instrument as only having 1 bend with just a little extra. Same with something like bari sax. This is akin to the loop in the neck of the bari sax, but bari sax really only has 1 bend in it. Something to think about when bending an instrument. Most instruments, and there are a few exceptions to this, the main scale is all played on 1 2. So the main scale of the bassoon goes from open F down to low F. The low F is the outlier because it is on the ascending tube, but that's not a huge deal. Contrabassoon is where things get really, really complicated because you've got the main scale on an ascending and a descending tube. And so by doing that, it becomes a much, much more difficult instrument to build. There's a reason you do not see things like paperclip style bass clarinets. The paperclip style bass clarinet, while some were made by LeBlanc, they were very, very difficult mechanically. You do get to a point though on some instruments where it has to be done. Contrabassoon is an instrument where it has to be done. The larger sizes of sarrusophone, it has to be done. Look at something like one of the big contrabass saxes. It essentially just it's got really the 1 bend in it, and that bend is just to get to the bell keys, and then you've got the loop in the neck. So you can have that ascending part as long as it's in the very early part of the instrument. But if you have to bend it in the middle of the scale, your mechanics just go way difficult. I hope that made sense. All right, what do we got coming in? Would taking out 1 bend from the lead pipe and another from the vocal be few enough? So when we're talking bends, this this is not a bend. This is just a redirection of the air. Basically, it's changing the air 90 degrees. This technically is a bend, but because it is so high on the instrument, it is as to be negligible. This kind of design here is a great way for space saving. But if I were to bend this, say I wanted to bend it like here, the mechanics just became doubled. Here, I've got two keys. I got a vent here and I got a vent here. Whoop-de-doo, I can get that done. That's mechanically simple. They're actually very simple. Well, one's difficult because it's got a cross, but I've got that all figured out. But yeah, the fewer bends, the easier it becomes. I always found that silly soprano saxophones like altos are the thing. I like curved sopranos. My curved sopranos on the other side of the room. They have a really sweet sound to them. But they are mechanically more difficult. And so they are more difficult to manufacture because they are curved. But no more difficult to manufacture than an alto sax. All right, we got any other questions? If not, I guess I will call it a night. And, will Jared be building his own great bassoon? Probably. I know that Jared did print part of it recently. Sorry, got something in my mouth. Jared's 3D printer is always running with clarinet projects, so he's letting me do all the test printing before he gets in and prints his own. So I'm doing all the guinea pig trials, and then once I say, okay, it's final, it's good, I think Jared will go ahead and print his at that point. But like Jared says, not right away. Because so the bell that I've got printing right now, I'm printing just the lower section, and that's a 32-hour print, and there's 3 of those. So it's right at 100 hours, 90 to 100 hours to print the bell. And so that's, what is that, 4 days? The printer has to be running and it can't do anything else. It'd be, for someone like Jared to do it, it would actually be more economical to buy another printer. But I don't think he's going to do that anytime soon. Anyway, guys, yeah, so I've been talking about 45 minutes now. I think I've answered all the questions. I don't think I've missed any. So yeah, I might do another live chat talking about the Symphony 3 progress, if there's some interest there. So yeah, if you have any questions, let me know. Reach out to me on Facebook or Instagram or something, and I'll try and answer it. But thanks for watching, guys, and the Great Bassoon is getting closer and closer to being done. I do hope to have it done by the end of the year. So, anyway, guys, thanks so much.